The howling winter wind carried the faint sound of a baby's cry through the desolate Wyoming wilderness, stopping Wade Montgomery dead in his tracks as he trudged through knee-deep snow back to his isolated cabin. December 1873 showed no mercy to the Wyoming Territory. Wade pulled his collar tighter around his neck, snow collecting on his thick beard as he strained his ears, convinced his loneliness was playing tricks on him. 3 years alone in this valley had changed him, hardened him in ways the Civil War couldn't. But there it was again, unmistakable, even through the wind's mournful song, a baby's desperate wail. Wade adjusted his Winchester rifle on his shoulder and veered from his path, following the sound deeper into the snow-laden pines. As he rounded a bend in the makeshift trail, he came upon a sight that would forever alter his solitary existence. A small covered wagon, one wheel broken, half buried in snow. The crying grew louder. "Hello," he called out, approaching cautiously. "Anybody there?" No response except the baby's intensifying cries. Wade's heart hammered in his chest as he reached the wagon. The canvas covering was torn, flapping violently in the wind. He peered inside to find a small bundle wrapped in blankets, tiny fists punching at the air, face red with exertion and cold. Beside the infant lay a woman, deathly still, her complexion ashen against her dark hair. "Madam." Wade touched her shoulder, feeling a faint warmth. She wasn't dead yet. The woman's eyelids fluttered. "My baby," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please, save my baby." "I'm getting you both out of here," Wade said firmly, decision made in an instant. "What's your name, madam?" "Sophia," she managed, before unconsciousness claimed her again. "Sophia Vance." Wade acted quickly, securing the baby inside his heavy coat against his chest. Then he gathered Sophia in his arms, alarmed at how little she weighed. The small family belongings he could salvage, he stuffed into his saddlebags. His horse, Thunder, whinnied nervously as Wade mounted with his precious cargo. "It's all right, boy," he murmured. "We've got extra passengers today." The journey back to his cabin seemed to take an eternity. The baby had quieted, soothed by the warmth and rhythmic movement. Wade kept checking Sophia's breathing, terrified each time until he felt the shallow rise and fall of her chest. His cabin appeared through the swirling snow, modest but sturdy, built with his own hands after he'd left everything behind. Smoke curled from the chimney. He'd left the fire banked before his hunting trip. Wade had never been so grateful for his own foresight. Inside, he worked methodically, laying Sophia on his bed and building up the fire to a roaring blaze. The baby started fussing again as Wade unwrapped it from his coat. "A little girl," he said softly, surprised by the tenderness in his voice. She couldn't be more than a few months old, with a wisp of dark hair like her mother's. Wade had limited experience with infants, but instinct guided him. He found clean rags, warmed water, and did his best to clean and comfort the baby while keeping an eye on Sophia. He brewed willow bark tea for when she woke, hoping to reduce what he suspected was a dangerously high fever. Night fell completely, and the storm outside intensified. Wade sat in his rocking chair, the baby asleep in his arms, watching Sophia's fitful slumber. He wondered about their story, what had brought a young mother and her infant out alone in such deadly weather. Sophia stirred near midnight, her eyes opening wide with panic. "Emma," she cried out, trying to sit up. Wade rose quickly, bringing the sleeping baby to her. "She's right here, madam. Safe and warm." Sophia visibly relaxed, reaching for her daughter with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered, tears forming in her fever-bright eyes. I thought we were going to die out there." "Not on my watch," Wade said, helping her sit up enough to drink some of the tea. "I'm Wade Montgomery. You're at my homestead, about 12 miles from Silver Creek." "Sophia Vance," she confirmed weakly. "This is Emma." "What happened out there, Mrs. Vance? Where's your husband?" A shadow crossed her face. "Miss Vance, Emma's father. He's no longer with us. We were traveling to my aunt in Oregon when our driver abandoned us after the wheel broke. Said he'd return with help, but..." She looked down. "That was 2 days ago." Wade's jaw clenched in anger. What kind of man would leave a woman and baby alone in the wilderness? "You've got a fever. Rest now. We'll figure things out come morning." For 3 days, Wade nursed Sophia through her fever while caring for little Emma. He'd never considered himself particularly domestic, but necessity proved a powerful teacher. He fashioned a cradle from a drawer, learned to warm goat's milk to just the right temperature, and found that his deep voice singing old army songs could soothe Emma back to sleep. On the fourth morning, Wade woke to find Sophia sitting up in bed, color returned to her cheeks, watching him rock Emma by the fire. "You're good with her," Sophia said softly. Wade looked up, startled. "She's an easy baby. Hardly fusses at all." "That's not Emma's usual temperament," Sophia smiled, the expression transforming her face from merely pretty to beautiful. "She must like you. How are you feeling?" Wade asked, setting Emma in her makeshift cradle. "Better. Alive, thanks to you." Sophia's eyes, a deep green he hadn't noticed before, held his. "I don't know how to repay you." "No need for that," Wade said gruffly, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Sophia said with certainty. "They wouldn't have." The days stretched into a week as the winter storms continued to rage. Wade insisted Sophia and Emma stay until she regained her strength and the weather cleared. He hunted when possible, keeping them supplied with venison and rabbit stew. In the evenings, they talked by the fire. Wade learned that Sophia had been a schoolteacher in St. Louis before her brief marriage to Emma's father, a charming businessman who died of pneumonia shortly after Emma was born, leaving them with nothing but debts. Her aunt in Oregon was her only remaining family. In turn, Sophia drew out Wade's story how he'd fought for the Union, returned home to Illinois to find his fiancée married to another, and headed west to escape the memories and ghosts of war. He'd been alone by choice these 3 years, finding peace in the solitude of the mountains. "Don't you get lonely?" Sophia asked one evening as they sat shelling beans, Emma asleep in her cradle. Wade paused, looking around his cabin that suddenly seemed so full of life. "I didn't think so, until now." The weather broke in late January, bringing clear skies but no reduction in the bitter cold. Wade knew he should be planning to take Sophia and Emma to town, to help them continue their journey, but he found himself inventing reasons to delay. One evening, Wade returned from chopping wood to find Sophia standing at his small bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of his modest collection. "You read Shakespeare?" she asked, surprise evident in her voice. Wade felt his cheeks warm. "When the nights get long. Words are good company." "Would you read to me?" Sophia asked. "I've missed books." That night began a ritual. After Emma was asleep, they would sit by the fire, and Wade would read aloud from The Tempest or Much Ado About Nothing, his deep voice giving new life to the familiar words. Sophia would mend his clothes or knit, skills she'd insisted on using to earn her keep. February arrived with a thaw that transformed the landscape. Wade knew he could no longer justify keeping Sophia and Emma at his cabin. The stagecoach would be running again, and she had family waiting. "I'll take you to town tomorrow," he said one evening, his voice rough with emotions he couldn't express. "Get you tickets to Oregon." Sophia's hands stilled in her knitting. "I see," she said quietly. That night, Wade lay awake on his pallet by the fire, listening to Sophia's soft breathing from his bed, where she slept with Emma. The thought of returning to his solitary existence made his chest ache in a way he'd never experienced before. The journey to town the next day was made in relative silence. Wade had hitched his wagon, making a comfortable spot for Sophia and Emma among the furs and blankets. As they approached Silver Creek, Sophia finally spoke. "I've been thinking, Mr. Montgomery." "Wade," he corrected gently. "After all this time, I think you can call me Wade." She smiled, that transformative smile that made his heart stutter. "Wade, I've been thinking about my plans." "Your aunt in Oregon?" "Yes. I hardly know her, truthfully. She was my mother's cousin, and we've only corresponded by letter." Sophia hesitated. "Emma and I could stay in Silver Creek for a while. I could teach at the school. I heard they're in need of a teacher." Wade kept his eyes on the road, afraid to hope. "Silver Creek's a rough place for a woman alone." "I wouldn't be alone if I had a friend nearby," Sophia said softly. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Silver Creek welcomed them with the typical curiosity small towns reserve for newcomers. Wade took Sophia directly to the home of Martha Wilson, the town's midwife and most respected woman. Martha agreed to host Sophia and Emma while arrangements were made. "The school board meets tomorrow," Martha told them over tea. They've been desperate for a teacher since poor Miss Henderson eloped with that cattle buyer. Within a week, Sophia was installed as Silver Creek's new teacher, with a small room behind the schoolhouse for her and Emma. Wade found himself riding into town frequently, bringing firewood, making repairs to the schoolhouse, or simply checking that they had everything they needed. The townspeople noticed. Gossip flowed freely about the handsome recluse suddenly appearing in town multiple times a week. Wade ignored the whispers and knowing looks. On a mild day in early March, Wade arrived at the schoolhouse after classes had ended to find Sophia sitting on the steps, Emma crawling on a blanket at her feet. "I was hoping you'd come today," Sophia said, making room for him beside her. Wade sat, watching Emma determinedly chase a wooden toy across the blanket. "She's growing fast." "Children do that," Sophia agreed. "Wade, I've received a letter from my aunt." His heart sank. "She's expecting you. She's remarried and moved to California." Sophia turned to face him. "I have no family waiting for me anymore." Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by shame at his selfishness. "I'm sorry. Don't be." "I'm not." Sophia's voice was steady. "I found something here I never expected." "The teaching position?" Wade asked, though he knew that wasn't what she meant. "A home," Sophia said simply. "Emma smiles whenever she hears your horse approaching. She started looking for you when you're not here." Wade swallowed hard. "And you, Sophia? What do you look for?" "The same thing you do, I think." Her hand found his on the step between them. A chance not to be alone anymore. Spring came early that year. The valley bloomed with wildflowers, and Wade's cabin underwent a transformation. He added a proper bedroom, expanded the main room, and built a fence around a small yard where Emma could safely play. Sophia planted a garden, hung curtains, and filled the once sparse cabin with small touches that made it a home. They were married on a perfect May morning, with Emma babbling happily in Martha Wilson's arms as they spoke their vows beneath an arch of spring blossoms. The entire town attended, marveling at how the solitary mountain man and the refined schoolteacher had found each other. "You saved us," Sophia whispered that night as they stood on the porch of their home, watching stars appear above the mountains. Wade drew her close. "No, Sophia. You saved me. I existed before you came. Now I live." As summer arrived, Sophia continued teaching while Wade tended their expanding homestead. Emma took her first steps in the garden, toddling unsteadily between rows of vegetables before falling into Wade's waiting arms. He caught her with a laugh that Sophia thought she would never tire of hearing. "She's fearless," Wade said proudly, swinging Emma high above his head as she squealed with delight. "Like her father," Sophia replied, watching the man who had claimed them both in the wilderness that winter day. Wade looked at her sharply, emotion tightening his features. He'd never presumed to call himself Emma's father, though he loved her as his own. "You are her father in every way that matters," Sophia said firmly. "The only one she'll ever know or need." That night, after Emma was asleep, Wade held Sophia close beneath the quilt she'd made for their bed. "I never thought I'd have this," he confessed into the darkness. "A family. Love." "Nor did I." Sophia traced the scar on his shoulder, a reminder of his war days. "When James died, leaving us with nothing, I thought my chance at happiness was over. I was just trying to survive. And now I'm living too." She kissed him softly. "We should visit your sister in Colorado this fall. Emma should know her aunt." Wade hadn't spoken to his sister in years, another casualty of his self-imposed exile. "You wouldn't mind the journey? Our family should be together," Sophia said simply. "All of us." The letter arrived in July, bringing news that changed everything again. Wade's sister Eleanor was coming to visit, bringing her husband and 2 children. Wade spent days expanding the cabin further, adding another bedroom and enlarging the kitchen. "Are you nervous?" Sophia asked, finding him staring at the newly constructed bedroom. "What if she doesn't understand why I stayed away so long?" Sophia wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. "She's family. She'll understand healing takes different forms for different people." The reunion was tearful but joyous. Eleanor embraced her brother for long minutes before turning to meet Sophia and Emma, who charmed her new aunt immediately. "I wouldn't have recognized you," Eleanor told Wade as they sat on the porch that evening, watching their children play together in the yard. "Not just the beard, but your eyes. They're alive again." Wade nodded towards Sophia, who was showing Eleanor's husband Thomas how to properly churn butter. She brought me back. Love has a way of doing that, Eleanor agreed. Mother would be so happy to see you now. The summer passed in a whirl of family, work, and deepening love. Wade expanded their barn, added more livestock, and traded with passing settlers. Their homestead became known as a welcoming place, where travelers could find a hot meal and good company. As autumn painted the mountains in brilliant hues of red and gold, Sophia shared news that made Wade's heart soar even higher. They would welcome another child in the spring. Are you pleased? Sophia asked as they lay together, his hand resting protectively over the slight swell of her abdomen. Beyond words, Wade answered honestly. I never imagined such happiness existed. Emma, now nearly 18 months old and chattering constantly, seemed to understand something momentous was happening. She patted Sophia's stomach gently, saying, "Baby," with solemn importance. "That's right, sweet girl," Wade told her, lifting her onto his lap. "You're going to be a big sister." "Sister," Emma repeated, nestling against Wade's chest with complete trust. The winter of 1874 proved milder than the previous year, but Wade took no chances. He stockpiled firewood, preserved food, and ensured they had ample supplies. The memory of finding Sophia and Emma nearly frozen remained vivid. On Christmas Eve, as snow fell gently outside, Wade placed the final touch on his surprise for Emma, a beautifully crafted rocking horse, painted white with a real horsehair mane. "She'll love it," Sophia said, admiring his handiwork. "You're a wonderful father, Wade Montgomery." "I had good teachers," he replied, thinking of his own father, long gone but not forgotten. "I want our children to have what I had growing up: security, love, a sense of belonging." "They will," Sophia assured him, placing his hand on her growing belly. "They already do." Emma's delight on Christmas morning was everything Wade had hoped for. She clambered onto the rocking horse with his help, her small hands gripping the polished wood as she rocked back and forth, laughing with pure joy. Later, as they shared a Christmas feast with neighbors from nearby homesteads, Wade looked around his table with a sense of wonder. 3 years ago, he'd been alone by choice, convinced solitude was his destiny. Now his home overflowed with friendship, laughter, and love. Martha Wilson, seated beside Sophia, was giving motherly advice about the coming baby. "You're carrying high, dear. Might be a boy this time." Sophia smiled, catching Wade's eye across the table. "Boy or girl, this child will be lucky to have such a father." Winter gave way to spring, and as the land renewed itself, so did the Montgomery family. April brought clear skies, meadows dotted with wildflowers, and the birth of their son, William James Montgomery, named for both grandfathers he would never meet. Wade paced outside their bedroom, while Martha Wilson assisted with the birth, Emma watching her father's nervous movements with curious eyes. "Papa worried," she observed, her vocabulary expanding daily. Wade stopped pacing long enough to lift her into his arms. "Yes, little one. Papa is worried because he loves Mama very much." When Martha finally opened the door, her face wreathed in smiles, Wade felt his knees weaken with relief. "You have a strong, healthy son, Mr. Montgomery, and your wife is asking for you both." Emma scrambled from his arms the moment they entered the bedroom, climbing carefully onto the bed beside Sophia. Wade moved more slowly, overcome by the sight of his wife cradling their newborn son. "Come meet your boy," Sophia said softly, her face radiant despite her exhaustion. Wade sat gently on the bed's edge, accepting the tiny bundle with trembling hands. William's eyes were closed, his small face peaceful in sleep. Wade felt a tear track down his cheek into his beard. "He's perfect," he whispered. "Just like his sister," Sophia agreed, drawing Emma close to her side. "Our family." Summer found them settling into new rhythms. Sophia took a break from teaching to care for William and Emma, though she continued to tutor several students at home. Wade's reputation as a fair trader and skilled carpenter spread, bringing steady work and income. On warm evenings, they would sit on their expanded porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. Emma would chase them gleefully while Wade held William, marveling at how quickly he was growing. "I've been thinking," Sophia said one such evening, "about the day you found us." Wade looked at her, surprised. They rarely spoke of that desperate time. "What about it?" How close we came to never having this. She gestured to their home, their children, the life they'd built. If you hadn't heard Emma crying. But I did, Wade said firmly. Some things are meant to be, Sophia. I believe that now. In September, they traveled to Silver Creek for the Harvest Festival. The town had grown considerably in the past year, with new businesses opening and more families settling in the area. Wade and Sophia were greeted warmly by everyone they passed. Montgomery, called Sheriff Jenkins, approaching with a smile. Town council wants a word when you have a moment. Wade raised an eyebrow. Have I done something to offend? The sheriff laughed. Quite the opposite. They're hoping to convince you to run for council yourself next election. Town could use a man with your sense and experience. Wade glanced at Sophia, who smiled encouragingly. I'll consider it, he told the sheriff, surprised by how appealing the idea seemed. Once he'd wanted nothing to do with community or responsibility beyond himself. Now he found himself drawn to both. That night, as music and laughter filled the town square, Wade pulled Sophia into a dance, William sleeping peacefully in Martha's arms while Emma danced with Eleanor's children nearby. Would you mind? He asked as they moved together beneath lantern light. If I took on town responsibilities? I think you'd be wonderful, Sophia answered honestly. You've always cared about doing what's right. I have a different perspective now, Wade admitted. I want to build something lasting, not just for our children, but for all the families here. Sophia's eyes shone with pride. That's why I love you, Wade Montgomery. Your heart has always been generous, even when you tried to hide it away. As autumn painted the mountains once more, Wade found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From the desolate, wounded soldier who'd sought isolation to the husband, father, and community member he'd become. One crisp October morning, Wade took Emma hunting, her small hand trustingly in his as they walked the familiar trails. At 4 years old, she was observant and curious, soaking up everything he taught her about tracking, wildlife, and respecting the land. Papa, look! Emma pointed excitedly to tracks in the soft earth. Dear, good eye, little one, Wade praised, crouching beside her. See how fresh they are? The deer passed here very recently. They followed the tracks to a small clearing where a doe and her fawn grazed peacefully. Wade made no move to raise his rifle, content to watch with Emma as the animals moved gracefully through the meadow. They're like us, Emma whispered. A mama and baby. Yes, Wade agreed, struck by his daughter's perception. A family just like ours. When they returned home, Sophia was sitting on the porch, William practicing his wobbly steps between her knees. The little boy spotted them and let out a happy shriek, lurching toward Wade with determined concentration. Wade knelt, arms outstretched, as William took 5 unassisted steps before tumbling into his father's embrace. Did you see that? He called to Sophia, lifting his son high. He walked to me. He's been waiting for you, Sophia said, her eyes reflecting the same joy Wade felt. That night, after the children were asleep, Wade pulled Sophia close beneath their quilt. 5 years ago, if someone had told me this would be my life, I would have thought them mad. And now? Sophia asked, her head resting on his chest. Now I can't imagine any other life being worth living. He kissed her softly. Thank you for crying in the snow, little Emma, he whispered. For bringing your mother to me when I didn't even know I was waiting. As winter approached once more, the Montgomery homestead stood warm and welcoming against the coming cold. Inside, a family thrived where once a lonely man had merely existed. Outside, the first snowflakes began to fall, transforming the landscape just as love had transformed Wade Montgomery, creating beauty where before there had only been survival.